I sometimes look back on our old what-ifs we've made over this long time we've spent together and say, if only Sasuke had done this, or what if Naruto took that path? I receive topics from you all every day and each one is meaningful. And don't worry, I haven't forgotten about what if Jotaro Kujo were a shinobi. I've seen it, it'll be here eventually. But for now, I want to focus on something else. I receive these topics all the time, and rattling around in my brain are so many different outcomes and stories that I often gotta pick and choose what is the best outcome. But now I'm wondering if I really need to do that. If I have multiple stories for a single theme, how do you peeps not deserve to hear all of them? And that's why I'm proud to announce a new series of what-ifs, tentatively titled Redux. Tentatively because I might think of a better name later. I'm certain that many of you know how the original story went. If not, we'll link it somewhere for you to watch. But now I plan to tell a new story, so sit back. Let's see what would have happened if Naruto had the Rinnegan. Welcome to the Amagi. Before we begin, only 25% of our viewers are subscribed, so if you're a fan of the video, please like and double check if you're subscribed. And with that out of the way, let's get into the video. There was darkness, only darkness, endless and eternal. What was this place? Was this place death? No, this wasn't death per se. Well, for one, it might be the beginnings of death, but for another, this might be the start of life. So what was this place, truly? What was this place between existences? What was this liminal space that connected the life with the afterlife? What was this place that stood as Jacob's ladder, descending and ascending through this purgatory? These were questions for you and I, questions for those passing through who had understanding. The wizened men and women of ages long past flowed through here, and as their spirits ascended, they could see something else. Fresh spirits descending from on high, each one innocent and without blame, without understanding, impressionable and spotless. But one soul seemed to be coming down through here again. This was not the first time it had been up or down. It wasn't even the second time. I would be hard-pressed to believe it to be the third time as well. This soul, trapped forever in a constant revolving door of life, death, and life again. This little orange ball of giggles and joy just did as it was led to do. Memories wiped, it went into the tumbler again to experience this thing called life once more. But among the thousands and thousands of souls that passed through this area heading toward new life, a single hand reached to grab this one and this one only. The little orange orb was confused. Why was it out of the flow? Had it fallen out? Was it now forever lost to roll around, abandoned and alone? No, wait. What was this feeling? It was so warm. There was music, too. A drum. No, a heart. A heartbeat. It had no eyes, no ears, no nose, but it was not without senses. Who held it? An elderly man, old and wizened, his hair a light brown and his face completely overrun with wrinkles, the scars of time left to prove the experience that life had bequeathed to him, held the little orange orb in his arms. Looking down, he ran his hand along it. He could sense that it didn't understand what was happening, only that something had changed and that change was not scripted. "Don't worry," the old man said as his ringed eyes looked down upon the soul with empathy and love. "I won't hold you for long. I simply wanted to take you up in my arms, my child. Oh, how I've missed you. I watched you every day and I will continue to watch you. I will wait here in the aether for you so that as you pass up and back down, we may have it. Our treasured singular day once every 50 to 100 years. He gave it a light kiss. "It seems like almost yesterday that your brother passed through here, Ashura. He's down there too, waiting for you. I wish he would accept me once again. I seem like only a burden to him these days, avoided by the wizened soul and an annoyance to the blank slate he becomes every cycle. But no matter how many times we meet, how many faces, names, and personas you take, I always see you the same way. You meet me with such kindness and joy, and this is not because you subconsciously recognize me, no. That's because this is who you are." The old man looked around the area about him, as if something were there that he could not see. Already? Time is up. I wait centuries for what seems like only a few minutes of interaction. Oh well, maybe one day your brother and you will make amends, and if so, perhaps you will finally end the cycle you've trapped yourselves in. Oh, how I long for it. Hagoromo sat there silently for a minute longer as he thought. Maybe I can do something different this time. Maybe I can give you one more tool to save your brother with. I pray this will be the last time we must go through this cycle. 1,000 years is too long to hold a grudge, no? Hagoromo would hold the orb up and begin to radiate his own chakra into it. Let the flames of my chakra burn on forever within you. Let your birth mark the start of an era of peace. The little orange orb glowed even brighter and giggled as if it tickled. This brought the biggest grin to Hagoromo's face. One day, when this is all over, you and I and your brother will also finally see what this heaven business is all about. You'll both walk me in together. He kissed the orb and once more lowered it into the endless stream of spirits heading toward the material plane. A tear formed in his eye as he watched it. It hurts so much to let your child go, he said. There, a hand reached out and rested on his shoulder. I understand the feeling, Sakamo Hatake said. Maybe not as well as you do, but I recall it myself. I thought honor might make me happy, might make him proud, but all it did was leave a scar only I can see. And until that scar heals, I will remain here in purgatory with you, Sage. Until all of our scars are healed. The sage watched as the little orb passed into the light. Yes, until all of our scars are healed. A set of lungs on him, Biwako Sarutobi said. She pulled the babe up, swallowed it, and delivered it like a little present. She delivered the infant to its mother, who waited and attempted to just keep breathing. Minato only now was finishing the seal. He would then lock down Kurama. There, now let me see my boy, he said. Yeah, no, that wasn't happening. Biwako pushed right by him to give it to Kushina. When you push a 7-pound human being out of your body, then you can be the first to see it, Lord Forth. Minato marveled at this woman. She was but a nurse, and yet she had shut him down so quickly. The most powerful man in the entire land of fire, but then again, she had practice. She had in times past shut down Hiruzen like this, so Minato, young and experienced, didn't possess enough wit to even dare stand up against her. Compared to her, he felt like a kite in the wind, blowing wherever her whims pushed him. He supposed that the same strength existed within Kushina as well, but she so rarely used it against him. Why was that? Perhaps it was because they were both a single unit, so perfectly unified that they shared the same opinions down to the finest detail. Minato relented. This was Kushina's moment, and he would not take it away. To even be present at all was a blessing. He felt as if he had hit the cosmic lottery when he was told that Naruto would be born this night. He was between two world meetings. Having returned from Kusagakure, he was preparing for a visit to Kumo in the upcoming days and feared he would miss it. But not now. A true blessing. A true blessing indeed. Kushina looked up at Minato. Minato, her voice said in a voice hardly above a whisper, the effect of having screamed your lungs out for the past hour. I need some water. Do you have any water? Minato nodded. Of course, Kushina. He turned away for only a moment to grab the water. He popped the top and took a sip himself to settle his stomach. Only now did he realize he was a hair widths away from puking. With that done, he turned back to give the water to Kushina, but before he could, he dropped it, spilling it upon the ground. There was blood. So much blood. Nurses strewn about, and laying on the table or reaching up behind her was Kushina. Minato followed her gaze and saw a masked man standing there with the baby. Minato pulled a kunai. The man shook his head. Nah-uh-uh. I wouldn't if I were you, Lord Forth. Minato looked over at Kushina. He softened his stance a bit. Put the kunai down, the masked individual said. Minato did so. Good. Now kick it away. Minato went to kick it toward the masked man when the man spoke again. No. Kick it behind you, toward the door. Minato was caught by this request. Did the man know about the flying Raijin, or was it coincidence? Minato did as commanded and kicked it away. Now, I suggest that Miss Kushina gets up and comes to me. She can't, Minato said. She just had a baby. There's no way she could walk right now. A single ruby burned from behind the mask's single orifice. She either gets up and walks to me, or this child will die. Minato tried to reason with the man, all while readying a second kunai he had not yet divulged was in his hand. When communications broke down, the man threw Naruto up into the air and planned to stab him. It was then that Minato threw his kunai at the man. The man would dodge out of the way. Minato would use his flying Raijin jutsu to teleport to his kunai and catch Naruto before turning to face the men. However, by the time he had turned, he realized that the man and Kushina were both gone. This was another diversion though, as the baby's wrappings were covered in explosive tags. Minato ripped this off and threw it to the side before teleporting out with flying Raijin to their home. Appearing there, he put the baby down on the bed and covered it once more. He gave it a quick once-over to ensure it was healthy and then turned around to leave. Normally, he wouldn't consider leaving a newborn all by itself, but these circumstances called for it. It would most likely be safe. Nobody knew where this house was except Hiruzen and a few others. Then again, that didn't mean jack, because nobody but Hiruzen and a few others knew where Kushina was planned to give birth at all. He had to trust that Naruto would be safe. After all, they were here for Kushina, not Naruto. And so Minato left to find Kushina and rescue her. As he left, the baby, now having cried itself into a dozing slumber, rested there. He didn't know how long he was there. He had no clue how to tell. He was, after all, only an hour old. This was literally his birthday. Some way to come into the world, Sakumo said as he and Hagoromo watched from their place in the heavens. Hagoromo sighed. It's not like it's ever been any different. My son's birth has always been traumatic, no matter which incarnation. Hashirama was born during the age of warring states. His mother gave birth to him on the battlefield. The sounds of explosions and death were his lullabies. My son is always upbeat, but death follows him wherever he goes. I'm hoping he'll be able to make use of my gift to somehow make his life better. They continued to watch. Naruto laid there. Eventually, a sudden burst of wind and a crack of thunder could be felt and heard. Minato had returned, and now he held Kushina in his arms. She was in such bad shape. She was hardly conscious anymore. She was weak. He laid her in the bed with Naruto and turned around, heading for the door. He needed to get to Konoha ASAP. He would leave. As Kushina cuddled the infant, she lamented that she would not get to live long enough to see him grow older. Holding him close, she pressed him against her chest to share what little body heat she had. There it is again, the infant said within itself, its words not of any language man could speak, but of the universal language in one's own heart. The language of emotions, concepts speaking together like music that only Naruto could hear. What could this be? Drums. It's drums. No, it's thunder. No, what is it? Bump, 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 bump. He felt it and heard it more. It's music, but it's out of rhythm. It's so weak. Why would anyone play their drums like this? It was cacophony to the infant, but then it realized what it had forgotten. No, wait, this is a heart. This is Mama's heart. Why is it so weak? He opened his little eyes to display the rings within. To the infant, it was all a blur. It was impossible to tell what he was looking at. Regardless, he sensed a chakra. It was so weak. He heard the breathing. It was weak. His mother was so weak. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was divine revelation. Whatever you believed it to be, it was happening now. Naruto's little hand reached out and placed itself against his mother's chest, over her heart. As if it were the most natural thing in the world, he utilized his yin-yang release. He was but an infant, a child. But he was an Uzumaki, the reincarnation of Ashura and a possessor of the Rinnegan. He had just enough to tell Death that it was not to step in on her. Kushina felt the relief immediately. She opened her eyes cautiously. She didn't feel quite as strong as when Kurama were within her, no, but she didn't feel as weak as she had moments earlier. Her chakra was balancing out, but whatever she'd been relying upon to stay alive was suddenly changed. The rules dictated that a Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails must die if the beast were to ever be removed. That was the rule. But somehow, the rules had just changed. Someone had just overwritten the rules. She couldn't explain it, but she looked down at the child. She was in awe. Kurama hadn't been the only thing within her to come out, and now, that other thing was sharing some of its power with her. But how could one possess such power? She was confused. She saw it seem to fall asleep on her, tuckered out and tired from the exchange of chakra. For a moment, Kushina feared it had died, but keeping it close, she realized that it had not. It was as strong as ever, merely sleeping. Once more, she began to coddle it, giving it a little chakra as well, balancing out, ensuring that they both had enough to survive. Suddenly, there was a crash, and most of the home was blown away. Kushina covered Naruto. They skid along the ground, tumbling and rolling. They would come to a stop where Kushina would begin checking Naruto for injury. He was okay. It seemed she had taken most of the injuries. She felt like a few ribs were cracked, but what was a little more pain when she had just pushed out a baby? She found a safe place to put Naruto and laid him there, hiding him. Ironically, there was a small fox den under a tree nearby, and that is where she would place him. Ripping the hem of her skirt, she would tie it around the tree branch to mark the location of the den. She then turned to face the Nine Tails with her husband. Kushina, Minato asked in awe. How are you even standing? She shook her head. I can't explain it, but I'm not as weak as I was before. I'm not dying anymore. Well, praise God for that. Go guard Naruto. I'll deal with the Nine Tails. Kushina shook her head. No, the Nine Tails is my responsibility. And as an Uzumaki, I am the only one who knows how to properly seal it inside of me. So just keep him distracted, and I'll begin the ritual. Minato couldn't argue with his wife, and so he simply obliged. He would rush toward Kurama, utilizing his many jutsu to keep the beast's attention. All the while, Kushina would begin sealing. She would use her adamantine chains to cover the area in a dome, creating a barrier. Kurama had not noticed it yet. He was too busy facing Minato. Once this was done, Kushina opened her shirt to expose the 8 trigram seal. "Ugh, it's completely ruined," she said as she looked at the warped symbols. The masked man had not been careful with the seal. He hadn't dared attempt to crack the code to the vault where the beast was stored. Instead, he had completely broken it. She would begin the process of replacing the seal with a new one. Given that she was a bit more experienced in these things, she was able to craft a seal even stronger than the last one. Once she was ready, she would fire out her adamantine chains at Kurama, which would grab him. At the very least, he had a single chain for each tail, though Kushina would later attempt to chain up not only the tip, but the base of each tail. A few around his legs, his waist, and one around his throat. With this, she managed to choke off a roar and a tailed beast ball before it could fully form, causing the half-finished attack to explode in Kurama's face. With him dazed, she began to pull him to her. Minato would teleport in. He saw that she was struggling though, so he began to funnel what was left of his chakra reserves into her to give her more strength. The beast attempted to claw and stop itself, attempting once more to cry out in rage before Kushina also chained up its snout. She kept pulling until suddenly she began to bring it into her. She then began to take extra chakra from Kurama with which to boost the seal. Minato thought it was ingenious. She was using her tailed beast to seal away her tailed beast. She was making a prison out of its own chakra. Kurama himself noticed this and thought how humiliating it was, not only to be sealed inside of a human, but to have his own power used against him. If only he had killed her when he had the chance. She pulled him in. As soon as this was done, the seal on her stomach spun in circles, each circle and layer spinning in different directions until symbols like chains covered the seal. She hit her knees. Minato came to her side. "Kushina!" She took his hand and gasped a breath as her face was twisted in anguish. It's okay, Minato. Kurama is just really angry. His hatred, Minato kissed her cheek. "It's gonna be okay. Remember our exercises, alright? What's the opposite of hate? Love." Minato nodded. "Love. You, me, and our little baby. We're a family. You're surrounded and loved, bathed in it, wrapped up and clothed in it. My life is dedicated to you and our child, so take a breath. Kurama may be more hateful now than ever, but you have more love now than ever." Kushina nodded. She looked up into the skies and took a deep breath and let it out with a sigh as her body seemed to relax. She smiled and laid her head against Minato's chest. Minato would lift her up and bring her to the tree in which he would lay her down. In the den. Naruto's in the den." Minato would reach in and feel a cloth covering. He would pull the tiny child out and into his arms. For as many loud noises that had just rung through the heavens, and for as much earth-shattering action they'd all had to face, the babe wasn't crying. Heck, Minato felt half ready to cry about the previous events, but Naruto seemed to be at peace, and somehow that brought peace to Minato. He would deliver the child to his wife. Placing the baby in her arms, he would hold on to them in a hug. He took a second to rest, catching his breath. He wasn't done yet though. He would wrap his arms tight around them and then rise to one knee. He would utilize Flying Raijin to get them back to Konoha. He would then lift Kushina up into his arms as she held Naruto. He would rush to the hospital where they'd both be admitted. Minato himself would receive a little treatment from overexertion, but he was mostly fine, and even better still, Kushina and Naruto were declared to be perfectly healthy. Minato would then survey the damage done. The casualties were so many that a hard number so far could not be determined, and every hour more survivors were found. In the days after, more bodies would be discovered too. It was sad to Minato, as it could not be known if these people died because the Nine Tails had killed them, or if they had died waiting to be rescued. One of the worst things he had to do was tell his predecessor and mentor Hiruzen that Biwako wasn't coming home. Of course, Hiruzen expected as much, as she was there the moment the Nine Tails escaped. All in all, Hiruzen handled it well, but as Minato looked deep into the man's eyes, he could tell that a part of him had died. Minato attempted not to bring such things home with him, but it was hard to do. When you were equal parts husband, father, shinobi, and Hokage, it was impossible for there not to be any overlap. Kushina would comfort her husband, telling him it wasn't his fault. "But Kushina, I chose our son over our village, and people died. A good Hokage would have sacrificed one life to protect the village's most dangerous asset." She nods. "Yes, but a good father would move heaven and earth to save his child. You're many things, Minato, and not always will these things agree with each other. You can't hold on to the split-second actions you took without time to think. Instead, be grateful that your wife and child are still alive, and pray for those who don't have it as easy." Minato nodded. "I am. That's why it hurts so bad. That's because your heart is enormous, Minato. You suffer with your village, and that itself is proof that you're a good Hokage. Don't let it get to you." Kushina stood. "Why don't you go spend some time with Naruto? I bet that'll help you remember your blessings." Minato nodded and stood up. He made it to the baby's room. There Naruto was, in a little orange jumper. It was so adorable. His hair was the same color as Minato's. The babe was asleep in a crib. Minato watched the child sleep. It had been told to him that there was something different about the child. During examination, the doctors noted that the baby had strange eyes unlike any on record. It had been believed by the Uchiha that these were the Rinnegan, though they were unsure how they manifested into Naruto. Some wondered if maybe he were the reincarnation of the Sage of Six Paths, or perhaps if he were the byproduct of genetics that were somehow hidden within the genome of both Kushina and Minato. Whatever it was unknown. The people believed this to be a sign. Some said that it was a sign that Naruto would one day lead to their village's salvation. Others believed that he may one day lead to the village's annihilation. Minato, though, he didn't think either of those things. When he looked into his son's eyes, he didn't see a creator or a destroyer. He simply saw his son and knew that he would do the best he could to train up his child the way he should, to teach him to be a proper man, good, kind, and just. In the months afterward, the fallout from the village's assault was still being felt. Remnants of scars plagued the village and caused distrust within communities. This led to a proposition that the Uchiha's placement in the village should be changed. The proposed spot of the new Uchiha compound was on the edge of the village. Of course, Fugaku did not appreciate this, and frankly, Minato didn't either. They both knew that this was a ploy, a punishment, a way of saying to the Uchiha that they were no longer a true part of the village. When Fugaku spoke up, Minato supported him. He showed that the area, while vacant, was far from prime real estate, and the prestigious Uchiha clan deserved far more respect than the piece of land would have offered them. And so Minato turned to Fugaku and told him to choose for himself where he wanted the Uchiha's new compound to be. Fugaku chose a place in the center of the village. This upset Danzo, but he said nothing about it until after the meeting. Minato would ratify the new placement of the Uchiha's home and would congratulate them, telling them that after the village was cleaned up, they were free to return to their old compound or remain in the new one, whichever they decided. This caused Fugaku to regain respect for Konoha's leadership and felt as if Konoha truly could value their presence. Minato would explain to Fugaku the reason why people were suspicious of the Uchiha and why it was that Konoha was cautious in their deployment of the night of the attack. Fugaku was still sore about it, but Minato informed him that not only had the Sharingan's reflection been seen within Kurama's eye, but Minato himself had fought against a Sharingan user, the same who had attempted to use the beast against the village. He told him that due to his own eyewitness testimony, he could mostly clear the Uchiha, but there were still some who believed this to be an inside ploy, and that those feelings, especially in the bitterness after the deaths and destruction of so many people and places, were only natural. People needed closure. They needed some place to be. They needed somewhere to place the blame, to feel as if they had gotten justice, and that so long as the perpetrator was on the loose, people would search for a scapegoat. It wasn't anything personal, it was just the way people reacted when their hearts were in so much pain. Fugaku hated that his clan was being blamed, but Minato's words forced him to put himself in the shoes of someone else, and that caused his wrath to further waver. Honestly, Fugaku had to say that Minato was a true leader, and a man with a tongue as sharp as any blade. The Uchiha were all such emotionally vulnerable people, and so often they could fall into a self-pitying hole. But Minato had forced Fugaku to view the situation through the eyes of others, causing him to understand how they could see things the way they did. And so Fugaku took that back with him to the clan's meetings in the Naka Shrine, and due to Minato's words, his dedication to listening, and offering proper respect, they decided to trust him to smooth things out, and the idea of a coup was put to rest. Danzo, however, approached Minato not long after, telling him he thought it was dangerous to put a clan as unruly as the Uchiha in the center of the village. After all, if Minato was wrong and the Uchiha were truly behind this, the entire village could be at risk with the perpetrators at its very heart. But Minato silenced Danzo and began to try to work his point of view into agreeing with Minato and admitting that what he had done was the best course of action. Listen, I understand what you mean, but you have to remember, it was my wife that was attacked, and I fought with and spoke with the one responsible for this, and I can verify that it was not any Uchiha registered in Konoha's current database. Just because they had a Sharingan doesn't mean that it's an Uchiha. It simply means that someone, likely during the Third Shinobi World War, pilfered a few Sharingan. After all, we found the bodies of many blinded Uchiha during the war. It's not impossible. It's even probable that it was someone from the outside. But even still, if the Uchiha did do it, then it wouldn't be such a bad idea to keep them at the center of the village. That way we can keep a better eye on them. At the edge of the village, they can do whatever they want, but in the heart, every eye will be on them and they won't be able to do anything. Danzo hated to admit that Minato's point of view made a lot of sense. Fine, we will do things your way, but if anything goes wrong, I will hold you personally responsible and see to it that you're removed from office, Lord Namikaze. Nothing happened. The Uchiha clearly were not to blame, and with this loyalty that Minato had shown them, they'd become just as fiercely loyal to him. While the village had been horribly damaged by the Nine-Tails attack, every day Konoha was getting stronger, and it was all due to the leadership of Minato. However, one bad did come from this. Minato had missed his meeting with Kumogakure. He had been planning to go in the time after Naruto's birth, but with the village under attack and Minato having overexerted himself, it was just time for him to rest and focus on rebuilding. But due to him not being able to go to Kumo, and likely also because of the attack on the village making them look weak, Kumo re-entered their hot stage of the war, bringing battle back into the world once more and continuing an old conflict that had seemingly drawn to a close. But Minato, the Uchiha, and the best that the Hidden Leaf had to offer led to Kumo being pushed back. Eventually, Kumo would recognize that the war was not going anywhere and was merely going to cost them in the long run. They considered a peace treaty. But something more than this, there was a secret greed in the heart of Kumo. They were a very powerful nation, but they were cunning as well. They wanted to begin stockpiling Kekai Genkai to understand how they worked in hopes that they could maybe transplant such techniques into their own people. Building of super weapons and stockpiling of power, they were truly the biggest threat to Konoha right now, and that was obvious. So when the Raikage offered peace talks, Minato decided that it would be best to hear them out. Kumo would send their ambassadors to Konoha to begin peace talks, and they were mostly productive. Finally, it began to seem that the last embers of the Third Shinobi World War might burn out, and Konoha would finally have peace. That was until that night. Minato was lying in bed next to his wife when he received a call. The phone rang and awakened him from his slumber. Sitting up, he looked at it and answered.
What is it?
On the other side was the somewhat frantic voice of Hiyashi Hyuga. Lord Fourth, we have a problem at the Hyuga compound. We need you to come immediately. Minato sighed. I'll be there in a second. He hung up the phone and returned it to its place. What is it? Kushina would ask, obviously drowsy herself. Something's going on at the Hyuga compound. I need to go check it out. Just go back to sleep, Ku. I'll be back shortly. Minato would grab his gear and throw his Yondaime Hokage Haori over his flak jacket and make his way to the Hyuga compound. He walked through the gate, remembering that just earlier in the day they had celebrated Hinata's 3rd birthday here. As soon as he entered the place, he would see Hiyashi standing there, holding Hinata in his arms. Minato would notice that there was a dead body nearby. He would walk to Hiyashi and kneel down. Are you okay? Hiyashi nodded. Both me and Hinata are okay. Minato let out a sigh of relief. That's good. He looked at the body. Would you like to tell me what happened? Hiyashi nodded. It was the middle of the night. I was awoken by the sound of my daughter screaming. I rushed outside to see an unknown assailant attempting to flee with her over the wall. I rushed out and without a second thought shut down his entire chakra pathway system by attacking the never-ending in his solar plexus. I rescued my daughter and removed the mask of the assailant to see it was who? Minato asked. It was the ambassador sent by Kumo. Minato suddenly hit full understanding. Those lying bastards. This wasn't about peace. This was a spy mission. Minato put his hand on Hiyashi's shoulder. Don't worry, this will all be okay. I'll be sure of it. He looked down at Hinata and put his hand on her shoulder. It's all okay now, Hinata. Everything's okay. After that, Minato would pack up the body of the Kumo ambassador and send it back. At first, Kumo attempted to pin blame on Konoha, insinuating that this was some sort of ploy and would result in the continuation of the war unless justice was delivered. Minato would tell them that the Kumonin attacked one of the many sovereign leaders of Konoha's prestigious clans, and that this was, in fact, an act of war. He threatened that he would not rest until Kumo was a smoldering crater. He told the Raikage to test him, reminding him of what happened during the Third Shinobi World War, how Minato single-handedly killed over 1,000 Iwa Nin all on his own, and how he had outsped both A and his brother B during battle, with their lives being in his hands. He reminded the Raikage that he spared them, but next time he would spare nothing and no one. He told the Raikage that the only way for him to get out of this was to accept the peace treaty. After a few days of deliberation, Kumo sent back word that they were ready to sign the treaty. Minato would in turn sign it as well. He would inform the Raikage that he was lucky that nobody in Konoha was killed, otherwise Minato would not be signing a treaty but instead a death warrant. With this finished, peace returned to Konoha, and Minato was finally able to take time off to spend with his family. Naruto slowly grew until one day he would be admitted to the academy for teaching. Minato was certain that Naruto would become something great. His eyes were proof, and already they had changed so much. A simple action saved Kushina and Minato's life, and that cascaded into something that could have gone 1,000 other ways. Minato couldn't wait to see what Naruto would do next. And that's the end of this video. I've been waiting to retell this story for a while, and now that I finally have time for it, I am happy to present it to you. In the last video I made on this topic, I told you that the dojutsu of the Naruto world were one of, if not my favorite aspect of the series. To me, the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan will always be the best dojutsu. If you get lucky enough to unlock a great custom ability like Kamui, you could easily stand up to even a Rinnegan user, but my second favorite dojutsu is the Rinnegan. It has many abilities and techniques, and it also has meaning, and is symbolic in the world of Naruto, and I'm just excited to see where Naruto will go with it. Anyway, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, ring the bell, and all that other good stuff. We love you all. Until next time, peace out.